Today is September 1st, 2017, and this is your Lake of the Ozarks fishing report for the Upper Osage area of Lake of the Ozarks. And this report is courtesy of Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service. You can follow me on my YouTube channel, Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service space YouTube, or you can follow me on my Facebook page, which is Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service. And on my Facebook page I'll have more detailed information, more pictures of the lures and stuff I'm using, pictures of some of the banks or bluff end points and stuff that I'm fishing. And then you can also find this information on Bassing Bob's website, bassingbob.com. If you're not a subscriber to bassingbob.com and you're going to fish Lake of the Ozarks a lot, I would strongly suggest you subscribe to it. You can get on there for a 2-day free trial to see if you like it or not. But there's a lot of good information from a lot of high quality people on that website. So, all right, here's the fishing report. This is what's going on right now. The lake level is about 659, 658.5. It's kind of been fluctuating a little bit. They've had a lot of rain the last couple of weeks, so it was up almost full. They dropped it down to 659, which pulled the lake down a foot. Now they're starting to gradually move that back up and trying to keep at around 659 or just over 659. The watercolor has actually gotten dirtier from our last report because of all the rain we've had. It's really backed up Truman Lake. It got up high again, and everything that comes out of Truman Lake that comes into the Upper Osage is going to be dirty, muddy water most of the time. And that's kind of what we're experiencing right now. So your watercolor conditions in the Upper Osage right now, of course, it's going to be clearer down towards Hurricane Deck Bridge, and the farther up the river you go, the water's going to get dirtier. But basically, the main lake is the dirtiest water you're going to find in the mouth of the creeks and coves, and then the back of the creeks are going to clear. And they're actually going to clear first. And the reason why they're going to clear first, as the dam operators at Bagnell Dam at Ameren down at Lake of the Ozarks, is they pull water out. It pulls that mud out of the back of the creeks, out of the coves, and it pulls it out into the main channel. Is what it does. And so, so if they quit generating power down there and they don't pull as much water, and Truman keeps letting water out, then that muddy water has a tendency to back up into the creeks. And it really doesn't affect fishing that much. Maybe initially, but the fish will eventually get used to that. You just kind of have to adjust your techniques and tactics a little bit. The fish usually don't change whole locations. So right now, here's what's going on. Here's the bite that's going on right now at Lake of the Ozarks in the Upper Osage. You can catch fish out on the main lake. You can catch out on the main lake points. It's running a lot of current, so it's kind of hard to fish, baits, down on the bottom and stuff, unless there's a brush pile or a rock pile that breaks up that current. Bluff ends are good, points are good, docks on the points are good, and docks on the bluff ends are good as well. All right, those are things that you can do on those areas. Also, main lake flats have starting to get a lot more bites on the main lake flats the farther we migrate into fall. So the lures you can use when you fish those, of course, if you're going to fish the brush piles, fish your Texas rig 10-inch worm or a heavy jig, and that'll get your bait down into those brush piles where those fish are. Deep diving crankbaits will work down in those areas too. I like to pitch docks, which means I'm fishing for those fish that are suspended right up underneath the dock foam. So the lures I'm going to use there is I'm going to use jigs. Zapper jig. Crockett Gator makes a very good zapper jig. Now this isn't the jig I've been using. This is just one I pulled out of the box. This one's got a craw trailer on it. What I do in the fall now is I put like a swim bait trailer, a small swim bait trailer on the back of my jig. And if you go to my website, I'll actually, not my website, my Facebook page, I've got pictures of the jig and the swim bait that's on there. And I've even colored the tails of the swim baits a little bit chartreuse because there's bluegill hanging around the docks. And if you look at the bluegills really close, the tails are lighter color than the rest of their body, almost like a real light chartreuse. Worms are good along the dock. Trick worms are good. This is actually a Cinco. You can rig these on the jig head. You can wacky rig these where you put the hook through the middle. The bait's like that. I don't wacky rig at all. I'll basically put it on a jig head and pitch it. Tubes are great lures to use around the docks, and then the beaver style lures are also very good lures to use around the docks. You just kind of have to pick the lure you have a lot of confidence in pitching. The one I have most confidence in is I pitch the 2 lures I'll pitch, or 3 lures that I'll pitch around the docks most of the time, is the tube, is the jig, and then the Zoom brush hog. Those are just really good baits, and if you feel like the fish are kind of grabbing the tail of the brush hog and you're not hooking them, then you can take that brush hog and just shorten it up. You can see this one here as you're looking at it in my left hand, this is one I kind of bit the head off and kind of shorten the bait so the hook will be farther down the bait. So those fish that are kind of short strikers, they'll be able to take that bait. Whereas a lot of times those short strikers, they're just kind of grabbing the tail and stuff down below the hook. So you miss a few bites. So if you're missing some bites by that way, shorten up that bait a little bit, but you can still use the same bait and still get the same action. Okay, so that's what's going out kind of out on the main lake area. When you get back into the creeks, the very back of the creek, that bite is still pretty good. The fish seem to me have gotten smaller because they've taken a foot of water off of them. So I think some of the bigger fish may have just kind of temporarily relocated a little bit, but they're still in the back of the creeks. So I'm basically using the same lures pitching those docks in the back of the creek that I am out on the main lake when I'm pitching the docks. The one lure I'm using in the back of the creek, it's differently, is I'm throwing a square bill crankbait as well, because in the back of the creeks you have all this wood debris and stuff that's been washed out of the creeks from some of these heavy rains, and you can also crank these along the sides of the docks. Spinner baits are good choices, rattle traps are good choices. Any bait that's going to go in a horizontal direction, those are good baits to use. The shad are up in the back of the creeks. You see them flipping around. You see bass smashing at them. So those are good baits to use. And then in your low light conditions, your topwater baits are good. You know, buzz bait's really good. The Crocker Gator head knocker, to me, that's the best buzz bait in the world. You can get it up on top and you can crank it very slow. And it's a big fish bait. I mean, you get some pretty good strikes on the buzz bait. I will use this, or let me back up here. The other topwater bait I use is a Whopper Plopper. And that's the one it's kind of like a buzz bait, but it has the tail that spins around. The advantage of the plopper is that you crank it along and you can stop it, and it'll float. Buzz bait, if you stop it, it's going to sink. But here's the key. I use the plopper usually more when the water's a little bit clearer. I'll use this head knocker buzz bait when the water's a little bit stained, a little bit dirtier, because I can make this blade bang on that head of that bait, and it'll just create a little bit more noise, easier for the fish to track those. And then of course, if the conditions are clear, you can use your Zara spooks, any pop arts, any topwater bait that you really like to use. You know, you go out there, use it, and go fishing with it. But like I said, my main two are the buzz bait and the Whopper Plopper. So that's kind of what's going on right now at Lake of the Ozarks. Fished hard the last 3 days. Caught a lot of fish. The size is not as big as it was, say, 2 weeks ago or a week ago. But I think the fish are just kind of getting readjusted to this changing, water conditions. I think as we move along here into the fall, the water's going to clear up, and we get up into October and we get into the Big Bass Bash. We should have some pretty good water conditions unless we get some more major rain that comes through. So thanks for watching all these reports. Appreciate your comments and your info that some of you pass along, and good luck in your fishing.